lashed out at my girlfriend for meeting her ex, despite knowing I initially supported it and unsure if I can forgive her. I'm a 25-year-old woman, and for the last 2 years, I've been in a relationship with my girlfriend, Claire, who's 27. From the beginning, she told me bits and pieces about her romantic history, not much detail, just enough to make it clear she didn't enjoy revisiting those memories. But there was one story she shared that stuck with me, her relationship with an ex named Kate. Kate and Claire were best friends for about 6 years before their relationship turned romantic. Claire told me how Kate had saved her from an abusive ex, a relationship that almost cost Claire her life. She always said she owed Kate a debt she didn't know how to repay. They got engaged pretty quickly after making things official, but it blew up spectacularly. They had a huge fight, and after that, they just never spoke again. That was 8 months before Claire and I met. Then, about 6 months ago, everything got stirred up again. Claire suddenly got a message from Kate, an apology for all the terrible things she'd said, paired with a request to meet up. Claire showed me the messages immediately, anger and sadness swirling in her eyes. When she turned to me for advice, I wanted so badly to tell her to block Kate and move on, but I bit my tongue. Instead, I told her to do what was best for her. I could see how much it weighed on her, the decision to even reply. She agonized for weeks, swinging between wanting some kind of closure and feeling totally betrayed by her former best friend. Eventually, Claire decided she was going to meet Kate. She framed it as a way to finally close that dark chapter of her life and to repay the debt she felt she owed. She told me she missed her best friend, but she was clear about not letting Kate back into her life. The thought of their meeting made me uneasy, and she picked up on it immediately. She asked if I wanted to come or if she should skip it altogether. I told her to go, that I didn't want to be there, but it would probably calm me down if someone else was with her. She ended up taking her brother with her. That day, Claire kept in constant contact with me. Every time I messaged, she answered immediately, reassuring me over and over until, when it was all over, she filled me in on everything they'd discussed. I thought I was okay with it, but after she told me, this wave of anger and hurt hit me. I told her I was upset that she still went through with meeting her ex. I let my emotions fly, telling her that any reasonable person would be hurt by such a thing and that it felt disrespectful, that if she cared about me, she wouldn't have even considered it. Claire was hurt. She said I should have communicated how I felt from the start and pointed out that she already blocked Kate after their meeting just to reassure me. I couldn't just drop it, though. I brought it up to a few of my friends at work, and they all totally took my side, calling it disrespectful. Eventually, Claire and I worked through it and moved on. But then, 6 months later, the whole thing resurfaced. My friends at work asked about my relationship and couldn't believe I was still with Claire after she met with Kate. They insisted they would have dumped her for that. Their comments dug up every bit of resentment I tried to bury. It all came spilling out when I got home. I called Claire and told her there were feelings that never really healed after what happened. I blurted it all out, how I resented her for meeting with her ex, how everyone thought I should dump her, that I would never have done anything so disrespectful, and that I didn't know if I could forgive her. Claire didn't say a word. When I finally finished, she just hung up. Later, she texted me that she'd give me space and that I should let her know what I wanted to do about us. I messaged back, saying I thought she should be fighting harder for us, that it just proved she didn't care, and she replied that she'd be there when I was ready to talk properly. Now I keep asking myself, am I overreacting? Update 1. After getting a ton of comments saying I was overreacting about the issue with my girlfriend Claire, I took the time to read every single one and waited until I'd calmed down to actually talk to her face to face. She came over yesterday and we finally had the conversation I'd been dreading and needing. Claire told me she understood where I was coming from, but she was clear, she couldn't undo what she did, and it was up to me to decide if I could live with her decision. She said she loved me, but I could hear the exhaustion in her voice as she explained how tired she was of having to defend her point of view to me in so many different ways while I refused to accept it. We dug deep into what we each wanted from the relationship, what our expectations were. Everything felt like it was on the table. At one point, I asked if she'd be willing to change her phone number so her ex couldn't reach out again. She was adamant, absolutely not. She's had that number her whole life and changing it would be a huge inconvenience for her. She showed me again that her ex was blocked. I agreed it would be a hassle, but I was honest. If we wanted to rebuild trust, that's what I wanted her to consider. She said she would think about it, but her tone made it pretty clear where she stood. After that, the conversation kind of shifted. It became more of me talking at her while she silently nodded along. Eventually, I asked if she wanted to add anything, but she just said she needed to think, and there was nothing to add at that moment. When I pressed, "Are we okay?" she told me yes. It actually felt like we resolved everything, and for the rest of the evening, I was happy. We both seemed good. Later that night, while Claire was making dinner, I hopped into a mostly dead group chat we have with all our friends plus Claire. Hardly anyone ever texts there except to share baby or partner photos or to make plans. I sent a message along with a picture of Claire at the stove, saying how sweet it was that she was making dinner and how happy we'd gotten past everything and how much I loved her cooking. Just sharing a nice moment, or so I thought. Then I, probably stupidly, tossed off a joke. Even if Claire ever cheated on me with her ex, I'd still miss her cooking. I'd probably win the friends in the divorce. I told Claire about it, thinking she'd laugh, but as soon as she heard it, she shut down completely. I tried to explain it was just a silly joke, but she wouldn't talk to me the rest of the evening. We ate in stony silence. I asked again if everything was alright and she just said yes. Then she made up a painfully obvious lie about needing to go home because she had something happening the next day. She left. After she was gone, I texted her, telling her she didn't have to lie to me, but she insisted she really did have things to do and was sorry she left. But the next morning, everything came crashing down. She broke up with me. Turns out all those people warning me she'd do this were right. She said I needed more than she could give, that we just weren't compatible. I begged her to get on a call so we could talk it out and she agreed. We spoke for an hour. I told her I didn't care about changing numbers, that I trusted her completely, that I was just hurt and trying to make light of it. All I wanted was her, not to start over with anyone else. But she was unmoved. She kept calmly saying the same thing. We weren't compatible and one day I'd find someone better suited to what I needed. I kept asking her to think about it more, but she told me she didn't need to and hoped I found what I was looking for. Feeling desperate and heartbroken, I reached out to a couple of her friends from the group chat, told them what happened, and asked if we could stay friends. Claire texted me, upset that I'd messaged people before she had the chance to tell them herself, and asked for 10 minutes so she could let them know first. But I told her that who I message isn't her concern anymore. Of the 6 friends I reached out to, only one actually replied. They said they'd be happy to stay friends. Claire blocked me after our last message, and maybe that's for the best, though it still stings. Now, I keep playing all of this over and over in my mind, especially the group chat joke. Some friends said it came across like a threat, but when I sent it, I genuinely believed Claire would find it funny. Now I can't help but wonder if it was all my fault, if I overreacted after she broke up with me, and if I totally misjudged everything. Update 2. I didn't sleep much after she blocked me. The only friend who'd replied about staying in touch texted the next afternoon and asked if I could swing by her place because she had a few things of mine. When I got there were 2 boxes and my spare hoodie folded on top. My key to Claire's apartment was taped to a plain envelope with my name on it in Claire's handwriting. Inside was a short note, "Please drop yours through the mail slot when you can. I'll make sure I'm not here." There was also a crumpled grocery list with my handwriting on the back, her basil pasta, the one I'd posted about, with rosemary, added in the corner. The pettiness in me wanted to read into that question mark. The rest of me just stood there in the hallway staring at the curve of the R like it could tell me anything new. I went early the next morning, right after sunrise, the city still quiet. I slid my key into the slot and heard it thunk onto her hallway rug. For a second I was sure I could hear movement behind the door, just the whisper of someone breathing, maybe me being dramatic. I didn't knock. I walked away and then jogged because walking felt too slow. After that, I sat on my couch and did the stupidest thing I could do. I started looking for Kate online. It wasn't hard. Old tags, old photos, Claire's brother's birthday party from 2 summers ago when he'd posted a carousel and you could see Kate in the edge of a frame. I found her Instagram. I typed and deleted a message 5 times before I sent it, that I wasn't looking for drama and didn't want to hurt anyone, but I wanted to understand what happened because I felt like I was living inside an echo. I expected to be ignored, or cursed out. She wrote back an hour later, "I can meet. Public place. I'm bringing my partner." We met at a cafe near the river. She was already there with a woman I recognized vaguely from her photos, short hair, dark eyes, a simple silver band, no theatrics. Just hi, and do you want anything? And then her partner moved to another table and put in earbuds so we wouldn't feel watched. Kate looked older than the last pictures I'd seen of her with Claire, which is obvious, but I mean it in her face had settled way. She watched me like someone waiting to see if a dog will bite. I blurted, "I'm not here to accuse you of anything," and she gave me this tired little smile. She told me she reached out to Claire back when she did because she'd gotten clean and was doing amends in a slow, messy way. She wanted to apologize without expecting anything. Her words, not mine. They talked. She said Claire cried, she cried, no hugging, and then Claire told her about me. She sounded happy when she said your name, Kate said, and it landed like a stone because I could hear Claire's voice in my head, saying my name like a soft thing. I asked straight up if they were back together. She blinked and scoffed at the same time. "I'm engaged," she said, lifting her hand like we still do that, flashed the ring, and then dropping it again because it felt dumb between us. "We are not a thing. We're not friends, either." I owed her an apology. That's all. We sat there in the smell of burnt espresso while she told me something I did not expect to hear, that she hadn't known about my divorce joke until after Claire had already made up her mind. She sent me a screenshot later. She said, "Eyes on the table." She wasn't asking for my opinion. It was like proof for herself, I think. I keep ending up with people who make me feel small, even when they say they love me. That's what she wrote. It killed me to read because I was on that list once. I didn't cry. I wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. I told her I'd thought it would come off as a harmless joke, and she shrugged like that was the point. "She wanted to marry you," Kate said then, so softly I thought I'd misheard. "Not today, not even this year, but she wanted that trajectory." She said she was looking at apartments with one more closet than she needed. I laughed, this ugly little hitch. "There was a grocery list in the envelope," I said. She added rosemary with a question mark. Kate half smiled. That's how she is. She puts questions next to things she's already decided on. When I got home, the friend who'd given me the boxes called. Apparently, after Claire left, the group chat lit up, the same chat I'd tried to be cute in. People started peeling off. One of my work friends, the loudest one, slid in to say something to Claire that made my stomach drop. Good on you for finally leaving. She's crazy. My friend said Claire didn't respond, just left the chat. I didn't even know she was still in it. That was the moment I wanted to hurl my phone into the sink and turn the water on. I texted the work friend and told her to never speak for me again. She hit me back with a shrug emoji and a lol. I wrote Claire an email because she couldn't block that, and because if I put pen to paper I'd ramble until the end of time. I kept it short. I told her I understood, finally, that what I thought was me fighting for us looked like me trying to corner her, and that I hated that I'd made her feel small. I told her I would not contact her again through any channel, and if she ever needed one good thing from me, it would be this: I'd respect the boundaries she kept asking me to respect. I apologized for the group chat message. I apologized for asking other people to hold the shape of us before she'd even had a chance to explain to them what happened. I didn't ask for an answer. She wrote back the next day. Just one paragraph. She said, "Thank you for the email, that she appreciated it, that she hoped I would be okay." She told me she'd left a recipe for the basil pasta in the bottom of one of the boxes because she knew I didn't remember the amounts and it really is nicer with rosemary. It made me laugh for real, which felt obscene and relieving. She ended with, "Please take care." On Friday, I ran into her brother at the farmer's market. He was buying peaches. I was holding a bunch of sunflowers I hadn't planned to buy. We froze like people in a bad play. He hugged me anyway, because he always has been a little reckless with affection. He said she was okay. He said, "She's sad, but she's okay," and I believed him. Then he looked at my flowers and said, "Claire planted the basil in a bigger pot," and then stopped like he'd betrayed a state secret. We both laughed and then I cried, right there between the peaches and the bread stall, and he handed me a napkin from his pocket like the good brother he is. I haven't contacted her since the email. I blocked the coworker who thought it was funny to escalate. I took the recipe paper out of the box, smoothed it on my counter, and cooked the stupid pasta with the stupid rosemary. It tasted like something I'm not sure if I've lost or finally learned. Last thing, yesterday, I got a letter. Real paper, real stamp. It was from Claire, just a postcard she'd picked up from some bookstore with a photo of a cat sitting in a window. On the back, she'd written, "I found this under the couch when I was cleaning. Thought you'd like it." No need to reply. Underneath, she'd drawn a little basil leaf with a question mark next to it, because of course she did. I propped it on the fridge where the magnets used to hold our dinner lists, and for the first time in weeks my apartment didn't feel like a waiting room. Update 3. A week after the postcard, a courier buzzed my apartment and asked for Claire by full name. I said wrong floor on reflex, then he read my address back to me and I could see it on the handheld, my unit, her name. I signed because it felt easier in the moment than making him haul it back down. The box rattled when I set it on my table. It was light, the kind of light that tells you nothing inside can be worth this much thinking. I stared at it through lunch, then texted her brother because that felt like the least intrusive route. He didn't answer until evening. He was out of town. She could swing by, if I didn't mind. I sat on that message for 5 full minutes and then typed fine. It rained the day she came. Not dramatic rain. Just the kind that feels like the sky can't commit. I opened the door and kept my hand on it, braced, and she stopped a foot back from the threshold like there was a line I'd drawn with tape. The hallway smelled like someone else's curry. "Hi," she said. "Hi," I echoed, which sounded like when you practice a second language and all your words have a shape you're trying to remember. I pushed the box toward her with my foot because suddenly my hands felt wrong. The tape was damp at one corner and already losing the battle. She bent to lift it and a little white thing slid free and clinked on the floor between us. It was a ceramic herb marker, thin and oval, stamped with rosemary in tiny green capitals. We looked at it like idiots. Then she laughed once, a real laugh that startled both of us. "Of course," she said. "Of course," I said, and then we were quiet again. She glanced past me and her eye snagged on the fridge, which was unavoidable from the doorway. The cat postcard. The basil leaf with the question mark. Her mouth did this small twist I knew too well. "I didn't mean to," I started, then stopped because I didn't know what I didn't mean to do. "Keep? Display? Breathe in the same city?" "It's okay," she said, quick. "It's yours." We stood there with the weight of that word for a second. "I'm moving," she blurted, like the box in her arms had spilled everything else too. "End of next month. Closer to my work. The place has," she swallowed, "a fire escape that catches a lot of afternoon sun. I think the basil will live longer." "That's good," I said, and I meant it, even though a little kid part of me wanted to say but I found rosemary and it tasted different. "That's really good." Rain ticked against the stairwell window. Someone's dog barked down the hall and the elevator made its reluctant hum. She shifted the box and the tape split another fraction. "I'm sorry," she said then, soft. "Not for leaving. For letting it go so long pretending we were in the same room when I felt myself halfway out of it. I should have respected the version of you that didn't make me explain myself in footnotes all the time. I kept making it a courtroom, I said, because the word had been sitting in my chest since Kate used something like it without meaning to. I thought I was arguing us into safety. She nodded. Rain on hairline, the tiny tremble of a shiver she would deny. You don't need my permission, she said, forcing a lighter tone, but you're going to be okay. I don't know why it felt like a benediction. I went to my hooks and grabbed the umbrella I never remember to carry and held it out. She squinted at it like it might bite. I don't need, take it, I said. Please. She took it. She stooped, picked up the ceramic rosemary, and held it out with her wrist, an offer. I shook my head. She tucked it under the flap of her box and turned. At the stairs she pivoted back and, without crossing the threshold, glanced down at the umbrella, then at me. The joke, she said, careful, like picking up glass. It wasn't the fire. It was just the smoke I finally saw. I know, I said, and for once I didn't try to explain the physics of any of it. She nodded like that was the only answer that would fit, then disappeared down the stairs to the soft drumbeat of rain on plastic. 2 days later, I got an email from Kate. Subject line, heads up. No body text for the first minute while I stared at the preview like it would rearrange itself if I wanted it hard enough. When I opened it, it was short. She said they set a date, that I might hear through the grapevine because our grapevine isn't as separate as everyone pretends. She said she wasn't inviting me, that it would be weird, and that she wasn't telling me to get anything to Claire, because she wasn't asking me to be that person. This is just so you don't feel blindsided at a grocery store, she wrote, which made me snort because the universe loves a produce aisle. I hope you're okay. I typed 3 drafts. I deleted them. I wrote one line, congratulations. Thanks for the courtesy. Please don't involve me in messages for her, ever. She wrote back a single check mark emoji and nothing else, which felt, bizarrely, like respect. Yesterday, the courier buzzed again. Different man, same drainage of apologies into the stairwell air. Another mistaken package with her name and my address, this time heavier. I texted her brother again, who answered fast and said he'd swing by himself. He did, an hour later, damp from the walk and hair worse than usual, and hugged me before I could decide if I wanted it. He took the box and, when he shifted it in his arms, the lid popped an inch and I saw a flash of terracotta and a paper tag that said time in the same small green capitals as before. He shrugged with his chin toward it like a secret joke we weren't qualified for. She's absolutely going to overwater it, he said. I told him I was rooting for Time's survival and he groaned like he was personally offended by the pun. After he left, the apartment felt too quiet, a new kind of quiet. I went to the window and looked at my own little row of mismatched pots. 2 basil plants I'd probably bought out of spite now thriving because spite is a kind of sunlight, a parsley I always forget to use, a clay pot I'd kept empty because I couldn't pick what belonged in it. I got my keys. I walked in the wet to the market and came home with a small rosemary, feet muddy, rain starting again in that noncommittal way. I set it in the empty pot and pressed the soil with my fingers, dirt under nails, the way it had been when I cooked the pasta and laughed alone in my kitchen. Update 4. The rosemary turned sulky. It was fine and then it wasn't, tips crisping in a way that didn't match any of the gentle blogs that tell you you're probably loving it too hard or not enough. I googled rosemary dying despite best intentions and got a course of cold feet and airflow and don't treat it like basil. On Saturday I took it to a plant swap at the little park by the library because shame is lighter when it's shared between women carrying pots and apologizing to leaves. There were folding tables with cuttings and yogurt cups and a handwritten sign propped against a crate, free starts, take what you'll actually water. Someone had drawn a tiny question mark after water. The curl of it was familiar enough that my stomach did that small elevator drop before my brain caught up. I saw her before she saw me. Hair up in the no-nonsense knot that means she's actually trying to get something done, sleeves shoved, a smear of dirt thumbed across one cheek. She was handing a kid a thrifted spray bottle and telling him to miss like you're whispering, not yelling, which made the kid giggle and made me want to hide behind my ridiculous rosemary. I thought about leaving. Then a gust lifted the corner of the tablecloth and sent a row of compostable cups skittering, and a tray of seedlings slid toward the edge in a slow-motion nightmare, and both of us moved at once. I caught the near corner. She grabbed the tray. A single basil start toppled anyway and dumped damp soil onto the pavement. We looked at each other over it, the way people look at an almost accident they both prevented and didn't. Hi, she said, breathless. Hi, I said, which was not original but was the only thing my mouth trusted. She looked at the plant in my hands and did that little tilt of her head I have a map of. Overwater, she diagnosed without touching it. She wants to pretend she's a shrub. I googled, I said, which earned me the smallest smile. There was nowhere to hide in that space except behind purpose, so we defaulted. She introduced me to Luz, the woman running the table with the calm of someone who has seen 1,000 ferns die and refuses to take it personally. Luz called me Rosemary's mom, which made me want to bolt again, but then she showed me how to loosen the roots with my fingers like I wasn't breaking anything, just making room. It was raining 2 blocks away in that way the city does where your street is fine and the next is a different weather system. Claire gestured toward a pop-up tent when the first cold drops made little constellations on the pavement and we stood under it with strangers and smelled wet dirt and plastic. I have your umbrella, she said into the gentle commotion of a woman explaining to her boyfriend that succulents do not want to live in his shower. It's in my bag. I meant to drop it with your neighbor, but then it felt strange to give your neighbor an umbrella. You can keep it, I said, because I am apparently someone who offers umbrella custody as a peace offering. But if you want to return it, I'm not going to call the police. She huffed a quiet laugh and reached into the tote bag at her feet. The handle of my umbrella appeared, familiar chip on the edge where I'd once closed it too hard. Tied around it was a thin green thread, a little knot near the top. She slid something else out and held it like a coin. The ceramic herb marker, rosemary in tiny green capitals. It was in the bottom of the box, she said. If you don't want it back, I do, I said too quickly, then softened. I do. We were careful with our eyes. Carefulness is a muscle, apparently. Luz waved a dripping hand vaguely in our direction. Plot 22 just opened, she said, as if continuing a conversation I'd wandered into. If Rosemary's mom wants it, come put your name down before the tomato guy gets it for his 7th. Empty intention. I looked at Claire on reflex like some part of my brain still thought we shared calendars. She lifted her shoulders, not quite a shrug, more like a release. It gets afternoon sun, she said. You'd like it. I put my name down because I wanted something that would grow because I was kind to it, not because I deserved it. Luz handed me a packet of radish seeds and told me they were forgiving. The rain let up the way a conversation does when someone important leaves. The kid with the spray bottle misted his own sneakers. Claire knelt to repot the casualty basil and passed me a handful of soil, and we didn't make that a metaphor on purpose. I changed my shipping address, she said without looking up. Finally. So the couriers can bother someone else. Good, I said, and meant it, even as a selfish part of me missed the ridiculous drumbeat of packages like we were on the same team in a stupid scavenger hunt. She stood and brushed her hands on her jeans. Dirt freckles on skin I knew better than I get to. I'll stay away from 22 if you want, she offered, and there was no martyr in it, just a considerate map drawing. I don't want you to have to reroute your life around my Rosemary, I said. I'll be fine. Boundaries don't have to be geography. Okay, she said, and the okay landed clean. She glanced past me toward the park's iron fence where a chain of people was passing little pots hand to hand like a reverse sandbag brigade. I have to help with the tomato guy, she added, apologetic. He looks like he's going to sell the seedlings a timeshare. Go, I said, and she did, her shoulder brushing mine for 1 second that didn't feel like a knife. I planted the radishes that afternoon in a crooked line like teeth. Plot 22 had a nail stuck in the sideboard and I hung the little rosemary marker there like a talisman even though it belonged to a pot at home. A woman 2 plots down complimented my dumb pun when I muttered that I was rooting for survival and then immediately apologized because apparently I am contagious with that. When I was leaving, I saw Claire across the rows talking to an old man with a cane about coffee grounds. She didn't wave. I didn't either. It felt like we had waved already with the umbrella. 2 days later, her brother texted me a photo of his hand holding a very ugly radish with an enormous top and a tail like a question mark, and underneath it, you planted chaos, which made me laugh in the produce all because of course. He said nothing else and I didn't ask him to. The umbrella made it home with me and leaned against the wall by the door like a guest. I took the rosemary marker off the nail and pressed it into the soil of my pot so it stood like a tiny headstone and not a grave. The plant stopped sulking after I moved it to a higher shelf, which I'm pretending is proof that sometimes you just need to be a little closer to the light. A week into the garden rhythm, I was there early, knees wet from dew, the city not fully awake, when I heard a familiar scrape of shoe on wood behind me and turned to see her at the end of the row carrying a nursery flat and a coffee. She tipped the cup toward me in that loose wave that means good morning and kept moving. She wore a sweatshirt I didn't recognize and a face I did, the one that wakes up and decides to keep going even when nothing is dramatic enough to justify how hard it can be. She set the flat down and bent and I saw the tag on one of the little black square pots, time. Of course. She stuck the tag into soil like planting a flag. I wanted to tell her her brother had made that joke for me already. I didn't. Luz wandered by with a coil of hose over her shoulder and asked if either of us wanted to sign up for the Sunday watering schedule. Claire hesitated. I said yes for the 1st and 3rd and she said she'd take 2nd and 4th and we looked at each other because apparently we know how to alternate without making it sad. We didn't discuss rainy Sundays. In the afternoon, I roasted peaches with sprigs of rosemary because the peaches at the market were exactly how peaches are in my memory of summers I didn't actually have and because I needed the kitchen to smell like something new that still knew me. I drizzled honey over them at the end and the honey hissed and went translucent around the edges and it felt like a magic trick anyone could do. I slid one into a clean jar while it was still warm because I am, in my bones, someone who believes offerings don't have to be transactional. That night, when it was almost dark and the sky was that bruised color that makes you think of rain whether it's coming or not, I walked to the garden and set the jar carefully on the corner of Claire's plot. Board, no note, no flourish, just the thing itself. The next morning, the jar was gone and there was a small oblong of clay half stuck in the dirt of plot 22. At first I thought it was a kid's lost treasure. I brushed it off. The little green capitals said basil with a question mark drawn in pencil after, faint and stubbled with eraser marks like whoever did it wasn't sure if permanent was allowed. It wasn't the exact same ceramic as mine, you could see the thumbprint, the glaze a hair more matte, but it was clearly from the same hands. I looked down the row for her and didn't see her. I stuck it next to my flamboyant, forgiving radishes like a joke both of us would get even if we never spoke it aloud. Kate sent a photo to the old group thread I am not in anymore because the world is bored with my boundaries and loves a loophole. It got to me through the friend who stayed, who forwarded with no commentary. The photo was 4 hands and 2 rings and a coffee cup on a table with a paper napkin someone had been absent-mindedly tearing into confetti. I didn't feel stabbed. I felt like someone had closed a door without slamming it and the sound was just a house settling. I sent nothing back and my phone didn't feel like a grenade. On Sunday, I watered silently, careful not to drown anything on account of my track record. Claire came at the end with a bag of mulch slung over her shoulder like a ridiculous sack of Santa dirt and set it down with a small grunt that made me move on instinct. We spread it together without making it mean more than spreading mulch. When we finished, she wiped her palms on her pants, looked at my rosemary for 1 beat longer than it warranted, and said, "It's happier." "It is," I said, and met her in that small truth. She nodded toward the little basil tile near my ridiculous radishes and made that corner of the mouth shape that is not a smile and is not a smile. "I found a ceramic studio near the new place," she said. "They let you make awful things and fire them anyway." "I like awful things," I said before I thought, then amended, "in clay." "Me too," she said. Then after a beat, no need to reply, which made us both laugh in that startled, soft way that happens when the same lightning hits twice and you stand there and decide not to be afraid of it. We packed up. A breeze came through carrying the kind of relief the sky drops sometimes when it finally decides what it's doing. On my way out, Luz stopped me to say someone had dropped off extra rosemary cuttings if I wanted to propagate. I took one and didn't write a question mark on the bag. Back home, I pressed it into a glass on the windowsill and watched the first white root thread its way into being over the next days, slow and, sure, not dramatic, a thing you only notice if you keep looking. My apartment smelled like peaches and green and not like a waiting room at all.